I think only 20%-ish that is recycled or
Like it's less than 10%. Sampah organik memang dari sisi persentase it's 8%, right? From all the waste. It's not a very big amount. But for sure from the complexity of the waste, it's much more complex comparing to other types of waste. Aku pernah ketemu salah satu pemulung, dia sudah melakukan dismantling and bahkan sampai peleburan e-waste pakai tempat masak gitu for the past 15 years of his life. Anaknya terlahir cacat. A country that done this really well is definitely what we've seen so far. Yang paling dekat, Japan has a very interesting e-waste management. Karena
Welcome to Unveiling Sustainability with Liberty Society. For this first episode, aku ngundang Rafa Jafar yang lebih dikenal sebagai RJ from e-waste RJ. Anak muda di sebelah aku ini luar biasa banget. Mungkin boleh kenalan ke our audience first?
Halo, salam kenal. My name is Rafa, founder of e-waste RJ.
And you know, you've done so much in the segment of e-waste management, e-waste, bagaimana kita bisa lebih mindful of that. So today we're going to talk about 30 minutes on how do we really be mindful of our e-waste and what do we do with them. Oke, jadi aku mulai dengan beberapa fakta dulu nih mengenai e-waste ya. E-waste itu adalah one of the fastest growing limbah in the world, accounting for 8% of the total waste.
Yes.
Dan di Indonesia sendiri, itu tuh e-waste tuh increases 10% every year, mencapai 50 juta unit by 2028.
Yes.
So it's such a big problem. Aku pingin dengar nih dari Rafa. What makes you interested about this cause? Like what was the problem that really makes you go, I wanna do this thing?
Right. Actually, I want to debate angka yang tadi 50 juta. Karena usually the methods that are used to count that is from how many electronics you buy, right? And then you count the lifespan, dihitung dipakai berapa lama, misalnya 5 sampai 6 tahun, terus habis itu jadi sampah, and that's where you get the number. Tapi in reality, di lapangan, itu definitely nggak mungkin dan belum tentu sama dengan number itu. Because sejauh ini sih aku belum pernah melihat ya metode untuk menghitung sampah elektronik jumlah e-waste yang di lapangan di Indonesia ataupun in other developing Southeast Asian countries. So that's also one of the things that we do di USRJ adalah kita menghitung sebenarnya permasalahan ini segede apa. We understand that it's the fastest growing, makes sense, karena teknologi juga perkembangan sangat cepat. Tapi what is the volume? And especially ada banyak sekali kejadian untuk ekspor impor sampah, sending it to another country. That's the real data in the field. And the real issue that is happening di lapangan seperti apa, that's what we try to figure out as well.
Berarti artinya bisa lebih tinggi ya?
Bisa lebih tinggi, bisa lebih dikit. It can go both ways. Like, well, of course we have to work with the numbers, harus tahu sebesar apa isunya, tapi identifying the issue how big is also one of the things that we do in USRJ. But it's interesting, karena electronic has become a very important part of our lives, part of my life. Semua orang sekarang menggunakan teknologi, anything cannot happen without technology nowadays. But then di USRJ we look things from the other side. Yang terjadi setelah barang-barang ini sudah rusak, what's going to happen? So it's actually a future issue. Jadi the fact that yang Tamara mentioned is fakta tahun 2028. Is it
by 2028, yes.
Exactly. So it's always talking about what's going to happen in the next 5 years, next 10 years. This is a future issue. So what we're building in the industry of e-waste is sebenarnya laying out the foundations to be preventive on what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So the things that we do is, of course, a lot of research, a lot of data validation, a lot of experimenting with different models on how we can create a good waste management system di industri sampah elektronik.
Jadi dari mungkin beberapa penemuan, salah satu faktanya adalah Indonesia juga ketika kita melihat di Asia Tenggara, belum cukup siap untuk menghadapi e-waste ini yang memang kalau kita ngomongin dari data mungkin RJ juga bisa kasih ini. I think only 20%-ish that is recycled or in a formal economy.
Like it's less than 10%.
Less than 10%? Okay, can you speak more about the problem that we're facing?
Because sampah organik memang dari sisi persentase it's 8%, right? From all the waste. It's not a very big amount. But for sure, from the complexity of the waste, it's much more complex comparing to other types of waste. Let's take an example of a phone. I used to compare it dengan botol plastik ya. In a plastic bottle, you get ada botolnya, ada tutupnya, sama ada the branding, right? That's 3 different types of plastics. But when you go to a phone, itu ada 60-70 elemen yang berbeda. you get plastic, you get aluminium, different types of aluminum, different types of steel. Bahkan plastiknya juga kadang-kadang banyak sekali tipe. And when you go to recycling, you need to be able to separate those components. Kan kalau kita daur ulang and you take it to a bigger level, mass recycling, you can't just put everything at the same machine and then expect something to go out from that machine.
Yeah.
It needs to be segregated into a level of what is the component. Jadi when you gathering the waste is one thing, sorting the waste based on the category is another thing, dismantling them is another thing, and then sorting again based on the components is another thing, and then the infrastructure of the recycling is another thing. So the complexity of the components there is in electronic waste is so much different, and the process is so much more longer. Jadi that's why the issue is very interesting and very complex at the same time.
Ya, dengan kehadiran e-waste RJ ini, you're coming in to help untuk solve
Simplify.
this complex problem. Mungkin dengan perjalanan dari kamu 11 tahun sampai sekarang, what has been terobosan-terobosan yang dilakukan untuk membantu permasalahan ini?
Definitely a lot of things. Banyak sekali yang dilewatin. Karena aku mulai wasari dulu pas 10 tahun, 10 years old. And it was based on, I wrote a book about it, aku nulis buku. And then it become a community, become organization, a movement, become a foundation. We want to scale. Gerakannya dibesarkan, jadi kita mencari dana-dana hibah. Lalu at one point, kita memikirkan it's good idealism, but then how can we make this sustainable in terms of long term? Gimana cara kita buat gerakan ini menjadi berkelanjutan? And so that goes in, the business mindset on how we can create a underlying business model to make this movement sustain. So banyak banget challenge-nya, and in different stages ya. If you're talking about me as a kid, of course, the challenge would be pursuing people, not a lot of people can, be pursued by an 11, 12-year-old kid. But that was the fun moments. Seru ngelewatin semua itu. But then when you take it to the issue of keberlanjutan dari gerakannya, it takes it to a whole nother level. E-waste lagi-lagi bukan sampah yang volumenya sebanyak plastik. Jadi mengumpulkan sampahnya, it's already a single challenge.
Yeah.
Having people to want to throw their e-waste is another challenge. Sometimes banyak orang yang, aduh ini handphonenya dulu kado ulang tahun gitu. Jadi you don't want to throw it out. You just want to keep it in your room and make it as an accessory. And itu baru handphone. Belum juga your air conditioner, your TVs, even your refrigerators, baterai segala macam. Itu dibuangnya kemana juga belum tahu. Dibuangnya juga belum tentu mau. Sometimes people keep it, and then they move it ke gudang. Terus dari gudang digeser lagi, and then baru ke tempat sampah. Baru ujung-ujungnya to the one place that is one of the largest stakeholders pemangku kepentingan di ekosistem kita adalah sektor informal, pemulung. Whether you throw it to the trash bin, you keep it, ujung-ujungnya biasanya masuk ke sektor informal, ke pemulung, and that's where it goes different. Di Sambatronic itu masuk ke kategori B3, bahan berbahaya beracun, dan itu baru bisa mengkontaminasi lingkungan kalau mereka diolah dengan cara yang salah, which usually happens di informal sector. Dirusakin, dipretelin, dismantle bahasa lapangannya.
Berbahaya bukan cuma pemulungnya itu sendiri, tapi juga ke environment ya?
Exactly, lingkungan sekitarnya. Dan it's a very challenging situation, because most of the e-waste volume-nya lari ke sana, and definitely sudah pasti what they're doing is dangerous for the environment and for themselves. But then again, the volume goes there. So we cannot just block the waste and jangan buang ke informal sector gitu. We have to provide another option, but then gimana caranya kita ngelakuin itu, it's also another challenge.
Aku mau kita pause sedikit nih, dan karena buat kebanyakan masyarakat awam tuh kayak tadi, mereka nggak mengerti kenapa e-waste itu ketika nggak di-properly dispose bisa berbahaya. Makanya kadang juga mereka seenaknya saja. Kita boleh nggak share sedikit apa yang membuat e-waste itu berbahaya?
A very simple example would be sebenarnya ada salah satu komponen yang aku sering brought up gitu, namanya BRF. It's a very toxic component, sebenarnya beracun, tapi berfungsi juga at the same time. That component is to keep your devices, laptop, tab, HP, kalau kena api jadi nggak meledak. That's a very important component that I think laptops nowadays itu masih ada. At the same time, itu adalah komponen yang sangat berbahaya bagi lingkungan. So it's tricky karena especially when we talk about batteries, TV-TV tabung yang lama itu ada merkuri, ada timbal, dan itu sangat berbahaya bagi lingkungan. Dan tapi kan nggak mungkin langsung terkontaminasi when you touch it, right?
Iya.
There has to be a trigger.
Iya.
Di informal sector terjadi. Kalau ada pembakaran, penimbunan sampah, pembuangan sampah kepada.
Jadi ke karbon ya.
Yes. Jadi nanti bakar sampahnya akan keluar merkurinya juga, keluar timbalnya juga. That's what's gonna happen kalau misalnya masuk ke sektor informal. So that's why pembuangan sampah elektronik ke tempat sampah bercampur dikasih ke tukang loak, it's actually never the right place. Like when you think about it, because it always ends up di sektor informal melewati proses seperti itu dan tidak terdata juga.
Idealnya tuh seperti apa sih pengolahan e-waste ini?
When you imagine ideal waste management, of course melewati proses daur ulang yang formal. Dan ini juga sedang dipertanyakan, what is a formal recycling process? Because karena ini masuk ke kategori sampah B3, jadi juga pasti pengolahannya itu membutuhkan perizinan, membutuhkan sertifikasi dari KLH sekarang, Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup. But then what is the definition of a sustainable recycling process sebenarnya? That's what we also debate in USRJ. Apakah yang penting punya sertifikat, yang penting punya licenses, atau memang prosesnya benar-benar when you audit the process, it's a sustainable process. Tapi yang pastinya when you ask about pengolahan yang ideal, it means that proses yang dilakukan itu tidak mengharamkan lingkungan. So it must be when you want to do mass recycling ya, daur ulang skala besar kan pasti ada proses perubahan bentuknya tuh.
Iya.
Like kan di separate komponen-komponennya and then dijadikan bahan dasar. Dijadikan bahan dasar ini pasti ada proses perubahan bentuknya. There's a whether it's must be chemical process. Then chemical process can go through burning it or you want to go to like a leaching process. Nah, bagaimana caranya proses itu tidak mengharamkan lingkungan? How do you mitigate the results of the recycling process itself?
Bisa itu.
That's the technology yang di Indonesia belum ada masih. Ada tapi masih jauh from the word sustainable perhaps. But then because sustainable has levels kan ya, and it has budget juga gitu. You want to go to sustainability level 100, you gotta you match the budget. No, it's not as easy as that. So that kita ngelakuin yang possible dulu aja. What can we do? There is already recycling companies di Indonesia. So we usually distribute the e-waste yang kita kumpulkan to those recycling companies. Dan memang prosesnya, it can be counted as a sustainable process, at least dengan standar yang kita punya di Indonesia.
Which is, boleh jelasin nggak? Itu kan dikumpulkan, diproses di factory ini, di seperti apa? Dan akhirnya tuh dijadikan apa?
Yang pastinya dijadiin bahan dasar. Because karena kalau misalnya masuk ke daur ulang, mass recycling tadi dengan volume yang besar, gimana caranya komponen ini bisa digunakan kembali? That's where the circular economy happens kan. Because it's really hard to sometimes reuse phones and computers karena chip size-nya beda apa segala macam. Jadi memang harus melewati proses menjadi bahan dasar itu. So imagine a phone, misalnya ada komponen plastiknya, ada komponen besi, aluminium, itu akan didaur ulang menjadi bahan dasar itu lagi.
Yeah.
So basically that's how the process goes. Jadi bahan dasar and the raw materials itu can be used in multiple industries. Jadi HP lagi juga bisa, goes into construction, goes into electricity, goes into anything itu bisa.
Kalau e-waste RJ kan sudah mengkoleksi 10.000 ton e-waste.
More
now.
Yeah.
More now. This was the latest data on your website. And kalau melihat what is it yang bisa membuat Indonesia ini really jump towards the intake-nya e-waste recycling itu jauh lebih banyak. I think I want to hear, ini ada dari sisi konsumen yang harus lebih mindful, tapi juga dari sisi korporat, dari sisi kebijakan. Gimana ya mestinya?
Of course, it's a lot of element at the same time. Banyak banget role-nya yang harus integrasikan lah bahasanya. So we have a vision di USRJ is to build e-waste circular economy ecosystem. Jadi memang what we are is more than just an e-waste management company. Kita memang membangun ekosistem ini to have in multiple fronts. Karena exactly, the ideal kan sebenarnya orang-orang ngebuang sampah pada tempatnya Dropbox khusus untuk e-waste. Tapi infrastruktur itu yang sekarang masih belum ada, belum lengkap, belum tersebar. We want to build that, tapi juga gimana caranya kita mengintegrasikan dengan tempat untuk naruh Dropbox-nya. Itu juga it has to be something with the place. Dan kita misalnya mau install 1,000, 10,000 Dropbox, then how's the awareness? Nah, it's gak guna juga kalau kita bikin infrastruktur yang sudah besar tapi awareness orang belum ada.
Yeah.
That's gonna be waste of money, right? So it
Yeah.
has to be done simultaneously at the same time. We built multiple divisions di USRJ yang memang fokus terhadap hal yang berbeda-beda, focusing on education, focusing on collection points, focusing on the informal sector, pemulung-pemulung, because they're a vital and important part, dan juga di bagian recycling and also the upcycle products. So we really look things dari ujung ke ujung. How can we raise people's awareness untuk ningkatin jumlah e-waste yang dikumpulkan? How can we create sustainable e-waste recycling process? How can we increase the recycling? And how can we create products yang memang terbuat dari material-material daur ulang?
Untuk corporates nih, yang they have a lot of laptops yang dipakai oleh employees dan setiap tahun diganti gitu, and they wanna recycle their e-waste. How do they work with you towards that? Dan akhirnya tuh misalnya mereka mendapatkan reporting atau seperti
Yep.
apa? Is it 100% yang mereka juga give, 100% semuanya bisa dijadikan bahan baku ulang untuk membuat produk, itu semuanya bisa dilakukan di Indonesia kah?
Yeah. So for corporates, ya, yang pastinya kita punya yang namanya sustainability report. So we figured bahwa the output that is expected by corporates adalah sebuah SR yang memang men-summarize kontribusi apa aja sih, impact apa aja yang mereka sudah lakukan. In a case where ada laptop, itu pilihannya ada beberapa, tergantung dari kondisi laptopnya. Is it a laptop that you want to dispose and recycle? Is it a laptop that you want to refurbish and goes back to the market untuk reuse? We have to know the purpose of the company first.
Oh, itu bisa juga ya di refurbish
Yes.
melalui USRJ.
Yes, that's a part of circular economy kan sebenarnya reuse. Karena nggak semua elektronik biasanya udah 100% rusak, mungkin bisa dirusak, bisa di benerin dulu atau bisa di resell. We call that ITAD process, namanya IT asset disposition. So including not just laptops, servers, phones, computers, stuff like that. Itu kalau memang tergantung dari tujuannya dulu apa, balik lagi. Apakah ini mau 100% di-destroy? Because sometimes multiple corporates have different policies in their internal companies. Ada yang memang mau contribute untuk fully 100% recycling, ada yang penting you can remarket it, refurbish it. Yang penting kita ada certificate of the contribution to e-waste management, and so on and so on. But those kind of solutions must always be tailored to what the client wants. Jadi makanya kalau memang situasinya ada beberapa laptop, harus clear dulu. What is the purpose?
Yeah.
Apakah mau di-recycle? Apakah mau di-refurbish? Or
Yeah.
you want to do anything else with it? You want to donate it to something else? Because we have our education program. Itu juga
Wow.
ada pilihan. So yeah.
I really like how your take di e-waste ini bukan tentu ada 6R, one part is reducing, tapi technology has become so essential di kehidupan kita sehari-hari bahwa akan selalu ada usage itu.
Yep.
Jadi it's about us being mindful, what do we dispose it.
Of course.
Kalau sebagai orang awam nih ya, aku ada cara advocating for companies, say, to use a company like yours. Ada cara lain nggak sih buat kita yang di masyarakat ini to help push or advocate for sustainability in this area of
Dari
e-waste?
masyarakat ya?
Iya.
Of course, yang paling simple message-nya adalah we always say that trash is not always the right place for e-waste. That's why we have our Dropbox, sampah elektronik. And it's a combination of working with USRJ, the consumers, and also corporates. Because sometimes we install Dropboxes in corporate places.
Trash bin is not the place for e-waste.
It's not always
It's not
the right
always
place
the right place.
for e-waste.
Okay.
Because you never know where does it end up. Pas sudah diambil sama pemulung itu. Belum tentu akan go to a formal recycling center. Mungkin setelah udah dipilah, oh yang e-waste sudah nggak ngerti nih, pemulung. Informasi.
Oke, kalau memang diolah di informal, terus mereka nggak ngolahnya benar, jadi environment tuh jadi buruknya tuh seperti apa gitu?
Okay, one example. Jadi lead, timbal, itu dampak dari racun tersebut is not instant, tapi I forgot the word, but it's a long-term effect. Aku pernah ketemu salah satu pemulung di lapangan, yang dimana dia sudah melakukan dismantling and bahkan sampai peleburan e-waste pakai tempat masak gitu for the past 15 years of his life.
Pakai tempat masak ya dia?
Iya.
Wah, panci.
Panci. Jadi biasanya contoh extension cords
Yeah.
yang biasa colokan jadi banyak.
Yeah.
Itu kan dalamnya ada besinya,
Yeah.
ada valuable metals. Tapi it's covered by the plastic outside. And itu nggak bisa dipisah pakai tangan.
Dilelehin.
Yes.
Hmm.
Jadi plastiknya dilelehin, terus biar dapat dalamnya. That's just one example. Imagine other types of components electronic, including motherboardnya, PCB-nya, yang memang racunnya mengandung di situ. Definitely, pasti berbahaya banget. And that person yang aku ketemuin, itu anaknya terlahir cacat. So, if you look, I quote this from the World Health Organization bahwa some neurotoxicants dalam e-waste itu memang bisa efek terhadap perkembangan anak.
Wow.
Jadi kalau memang di environment of itu kan melakukannya pasti di belakang rumah ya, di gudang gitu, and the activities over there. So dari udaranya, dari bahkan soil juga itu juga sekitarnya pasti juga terkontaminasi oleh racun dalam sampah elektronik. And it's a long term. Akhirnya efeknya ke anak yang mungkin dianya juga belum. We don't know about the effects of it. It's a really long term thing.
Dan
really
itu kayak hidden, people don't see it. Makanya awareness ini juga lama buat people catch on.
Yes.
Tapi ketika ini harm udah done, very hard to reverse.
That's true.
Ketika udah di satu soilnya, satu RT, satu RW itu terkontaminate oleh kerjaan yang di sini. Karena kan sebetulnya e-waste itu juga mempunyai value yang sangat tinggi.
Dibanding sampah yang lainnya.
Yes, when you're able to mengolah dan
lebih
menjual.
Iya.
Iya, dan menjual seperti itu. Oke.
Lebih tinggi, it's not always paling tinggi.
Oke. That's very great to hear. Jadi langkah kecil kita adalah menyuarakan ini. Dari skala besar kita bisa menyokong beberapa policy. Is there any other thing that you want to share untuk menginspirasi audience? Maybe a success story that you've seen from people that have done this really well, a country that have done this really well.
Yeah, a country that have done this really well is definitely what we've seen so far. Yang paling dekat, Japan has a very interesting e-waste management. Karena jadi di sana we have a team about a few years ago yang memang sekolahnya di Jepang. Dan setelah dia selesai kuliah, itu kan ada banyak peralatan dia yang ada di apartemennya. You have microwaves, have refrigerators, that itu yang biasanya dilakukan oleh mahasiswa di sana. Mereka turunin ke adik kelasnya, they give it to their new junior, whether they know them or not. Karena kalau mereka dispose, mereka buang, they have to pay for that. So even throwing e-waste di Japan,
they have to pay.
They have to pay for something. Karena that's another category of e-waste. E-waste has 7 categories, big categories, and about 50 small categories. Dan proses daur ulang dari kategori yang berbeda itu juga beda. Yeah, in Japan, in Japan they have a very sophisticated e-waste management system. Di mana orang-orang justru malah kalau mau buang e-waste harus bayar for certain category of e-waste, kayak yang gede-gede ya, refrigerator, microwave. Karena untuk beberapa kategori itu justru malah cost daur ulangnya lebih tinggi dibanding value yang bisa diambil. That's also a misconception kan, orang-orang kira, oh e-waste kayaknya value tinggi banget. Tapi prosesnya juga mahal, jangan salah. And especially if you want to have a very sustainable recycling process, itu juga costnya tinggi.
Visinya e-waste RJ itu apa? Apakah sampai komunitas Indonesia harus membayar kayak di Jepang begitu?
That's the interesting part. That's the question. Kalau misalnya membebankan siapa yang bayar recycling fee-nya kan juga ke siapa nih? Is it to the consumers?
Yeah.
Is it to the companies produsen yang membuat?
Right.
Or who should pay it? Or someone else should pay it?
Yes, who should pay?
Dan fee itu kan juga tergantung bisa ditaruh di mana. Does it include to when you buy the electronic, or you pay it when you want to dispose it? There's so many different techniques on how you want to implement yang namanya EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility.
Right.
So I can't have a definite answer now because pertama-tama kita harus tahu dulu tadi yang pertama, how big is the issue in Indonesia or in other developing Southeast Asian countries? Ini berapa e-waste yang kita hadapin? What kind of volume are we expecting? We can't just, ada policy, misalnya ada tanggung jawab untuk semua corporate harus mendaur ulang recycle e-waste-nya. But that's gonna change the budget of the company, it's another thing. So komitmen regulasi dan komitmen industri untuk mau melakukan e-waste management kan juga harus di-balance gitu. You can't just set out regulations yang langsung nyuruh-nyuruh sana-sini and have sanctions and everything. So it's a very interesting question that's very still debatable. Maksudnya there's no definite answer yet, tergantung situasi seperti apa.
Yeah, because even the scale of the problem, we haven't have a good grasp of that. Makanya solusinya ini yang lagi dicari. So in the next 3 years, how do you think you're organization will evolve?
Yang pastinya pertama, access to recycling udah harus jelas dulu. You know where to throw it, you know what to do with it. That needs to be clear. And also the volume of the e-waste that we're facing right now. It's easy to do di Pulau Jawa mungkin ya, karena there's so many methods on how you can collect the data. Tapi when you go to other continents, Sulawesi, Kalimantan, it gets a bit more challenging. Karena banyak juga biasanya sampah-sampah yang dari Jakarta itu di-dump keluar kota, segala macam. Itu gimana cara kita ngitungnya, that's also a challenge by itself. Mapping out, we have a team specifically for mapping out the flow of e-waste. Itu juga yang kita cari tahu. But back to the question, 2-3 years, we want to have a greater grasp on the issue, not just in Indonesia, but in also other developing countries. And also we want to deploy, sebenarnya paling penting kan awareness ya, education program itu yang paling penting. That's how we can grow the company, is by raising people's awareness. Itu yang paling penting. The education program needs to be engaged in multiple fronts, schools, universities, and even offices juga penting. Because without awareness, there's no use of building any kind of infrastructure. So we're heading towards that, getting a better grasp on the issue, building a better awareness in people about e-waste, and also building access to recycling. Aksesnya dulu kita adain. Kalau masalah infrastructure recyclingnya, itu juga tergantung. Karena if you wanna build an infrastructure, there needs to be a secure supply of e-waste.
Of course.
So you gotta know first supply yang paling banyak di mana segala macam, by providing that access, so you can know, okay, di sini kayaknya gede nih orang open e-waste. It's a good volume of e-waste. Let's start with an infrastructure over here, over there.
It's like having a visibility study. Cuman aku sama Rafa definitely align on kita sebagai UMKM or social enterprise or an organizations yang perlu menggandeng big corporates to really work together to find the solutions together.
That's true.
Karena kalau misalnya kita cuma rely on memang yang old giant factories who are already doing it for years, ngomong dengan industri yang modernity ini, they need a bridge. And oftentimes, I see us as the bridge. Jadi balik lagi ke tema kita di podcast ini, is unveiling sustainability. We learn about kalau tidak ada demand dari masyarakat, when they are aware about this issue, infrastructure pun to get there, it's hard.
Really hard.
But working and supporting organizations like e-waste RJ is very crucial because there's a ripple effect yang memang kita mau jalankan, bukan hanya ke environment itu sendiri, dari ranah your product itu actually your product of e-waste management is bettering our planet and also the life of these pemulung, tapi juga dari sisi the bigger scale of where Indonesia should be as a country.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Perhaps for Rafa, is there anything else as we're coming to wrap up in a little bit that you'd like to say to just encourage people to follow the lifestyle that you're doing?
Yeah. The most important thing is to be responsible about your e-waste. Itu yang paling penting. You can have any kind of technology that you want to in this 21st century. Udah banyak sekali pilihannya, but then balance it out dengan kita tahu dispose-nya nanti kemana. Kalau misalnya itu barang itu sudah menjadi sampah. And just like an interesting information, we're gonna have EV waste in probably the next 10 years. Right? That's gonna be a new problem that we're gonna have. So know and be responsible about your e-waste. That's the most important thing. Kita tahu kita mau buang e-waste kita kemana, and that you can find it through our website and through our socials. Bisa buang e-waste in e-waste.
Okay, udah ada Dropbox-nya berarti ya?
Udah ada Dropbox.
Okay, awesome. Well, everyone, so you should check out e-waste RJ on website, email, and also Instagram.
Everything's e-waste RJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rafa.
You're
Glad
welcome,
to have you here.
Glad to be here as well.
Awesome.